We sometimes wonder what Sevastopol means to Vladimir Putin, and we think we have a pretty good idea. Sevastopol isn't just a port to him. It's proof. Proof that Crimea is his. Proof that the Black Sea Fleet still matters. Proof that 2014 was a conquest and not a liability. For generations, Sevastopol has been the single most symbolic naval city in Russian identity, the place where Soviet sailors held out against siege after siege, the place czars and commissars alike pointed to as evidence that Russia was a great sea power. Putin inherited that mythology and built his own legend on top of it. Taking Crimea in 2014 without firing a shot was supposed to be his masterstroke, and Sevastopol was supposed to be the trophy case. For years, Putin has treated that harbor like an unsinkable fortress, a place where Russian warships could sit at anchor and remind the world that the peninsula belongs to Moscow, permanently and unquestionably. That's why what just happened there is so damaging. Overnight, on April 25th into April 26th, 2026, Ukraine's security service struck the naval base at Sevastopol, hitting two Russian landing ships at anchor, the Rapucha-class Yamal and the Tapir-class Nikolai Filchenkov, along with the reconnaissance ship Ivan Kurz, a coastal radar station, and a MiG-31 fighter sitting on the tarmac at Belbek airfield. Sevastopol's own occupation governor admitted Ukraine launched at least 71 drones that night. This wasn't a stray hit or a lucky shot that slipped through. It was one of the largest single strike campaigns the city has ever absorbed, and it happened inside the harbor Putin was supposed to have made safe more than a decade after he claimed it. Understanding what Sevastopol was supposed to represent explains why this strike cuts so deep. Russia had already pulled most of its Black Sea Fleet out of the port years earlier, relocating the bulk of its warships east to Novorossiysk, because Ukrainian drones and missiles had made Sevastopol too dangerous to keep them there safely. That relocation alone was already an admission of weakness dressed up as a logistics decision. So when Yamal and Filchenkov gambled on sitting in port at Sevastopol anyway, it was supposed to be safe enough for a couple of amphibious transports. It wasn't. Ukrainian special mission operators didn't just hit the ships, they also destroyed a Podlyot K-1 radar system worth roughly $5 million, deliberately blinding the base's air defenses before the drones went in. That's not luck. That's a rehearsed, repeatable playbook, refined strike after strike, for making one of Russia's last hardened naval strongholds functionally indefensible. If this were an isolated incident, Putin could shrug it off as bad timing. It isn't. This strike is one entry in a much longer pattern that has quietly gutted the Black Sea Fleet since the invasion began in 2022. Ukraine's Ministry of Defense estimates that around 30% of the fleet's combat assets have been destroyed or seriously damaged. The flagship cruiser Moskva is gone. The landing ships Saratov, Novocherkassk, and Cesar Kunikov are gone. The corvette Ivanovets is gone. The patrol ship Sergei Kotov was hit by a swarm of Magura drones near the Kerch Strait. Olenigorsky Gornyak barely survived a drone strike in Novorossiysk, the very port Russia moved its fleet to specifically because Sevastopol had become too exposed. And that supposedly safer harbor hasn't stayed safe either. The frigate Admiral Essen was struck at dock in Novorossiysk earlier this year, and it took a second, more critical hit to its Caliber missile systems just months later. Russia keeps retreating to find shelter, and Ukraine keeps following it there. There is no longer a single point on the Black Sea coastline that Putin's navy can point to and honestly call secure. Before we go further, this is the military show, and we make videos like this to show you how power really moves at sea. If you haven't already, hit subscribe and then get back to the video. The damage isn't staying contained to the Black Sea either. The same maritime drone technology that hollowed out Sevastopol has become one of Ukraine's most valuable exports of credibility. U.S. Special Forces used a Ukrainian-designed Magura drone boat to sink a target vessel during the Balakatan exercise in the Philippines this past June, the first time the platform has been used anywhere in the Indo-Pacific. U-Force, the company behind Magura, is now in talks with buyers across that region and is scouting at least 2 potential production sites there. Ukraine barred weapons exports back in 2022 to keep every drone at the front line, and only started opening that technology to outside buyers in 2025. Think about what that timeline means. The exact category of weapon that Putin's navy has never found an answer for is now being adopted by the United States military as a working template for a possible future conflict with China across the Pacific. Ukraine built a defensive necessity out of sheer desperation, and it has turned into a strategic export that raises Kyiv's standing on the other side of the planet. Every ship Russia loses in the Black Sea doesn't just weaken Putin's navy in the moment. It advertises Ukrainian engineering to militaries that matter far beyond this war, and it does so for free, on camera, every single time. And there's a cost dimension to this that Putin can't drone jam his way out of. Rapucha and Tapir-class landing ships like Yamal and Filchenkov are Soviet-era hulls, most of them decades old, and Russia isn't building meaningful replacements at any real pace, because Western sanctions have starved its shipyards of the foreign components modern warships depend on. Every hull Ukraine puts on the seabed or drags back to port smoking is one Russia effectively cannot replace on any relevant timeline. That's the quiet math sitting underneath this strike. It isn't just about two ships getting hit on one bad night. It's about a fleet that is shrinking with no restocking plan, defending a coastline that increasingly can't be defended, and spending money it doesn't have on air defense systems and radar installations that keep getting identified and destroyed before they ever get the chance to prove useful. There's a human cost buried in this too, one that rarely makes it into the casualty counts. Every landing ship Russia loses is a ship that can no longer resupply garrisons, rotate exhausted troops, or move armor along the coast without relying on far riskier overland routes through contested territory. Commanders on the ground inherit the consequences of a navy that can no longer guarantee safe passage, and it's ordinary conscripts, not admirals in Moscow, who end up paying for that gap with longer, more exposed supply lines. Watch how Moscow handled the aftermath, because that tells its own story. Sevastopol's occupation governor didn't deny the scale of the attack. He couldn't, not with 71 drones logged by air defense crews and residents filming smoke over the harbor on their phones. Instead, the response was to frame it as an unusually large but survivable barrage, the same language Russian officials have reused after almost every major strike since 2023. That's the tell. When a fortress is actually secure, officials don't need a script for explaining away the smoke. Compare that to how Russia talked about Sevastopol back in 2022 and 2023, when officials insisted the city was untouchable and mocked Ukrainian claims of successful strikes. There's no mockery left in these statements anymore, just damage control. The rhetoric has quietly downgraded from "this cannot happen here" to "this happened here, but we're managing it." And that shift in language is itself a casualty of the war, even if nobody puts it in a casualty report. It's also worth asking what Yamal and Filchenkov were even doing in port that night. Neither ship is new. Filchenkov was built in the Soviet era and has spent decades in service, and both classes exist specifically to move troops and equipment across water. With Sevastopol already known to be within range of Ukrainian strike drones, keeping two of the fleet's dwindling number of working amphibious ships there wasn't a sign of confidence. It was a sign that Russia is running out of safer places to put them. When your safest available option is a harbor that's already been hit dozens of times, that's not a strategy. That's a fleet with nowhere left to hide. Putin's dream for Sevastopol was simple: turn it into the eternal proof that Crimea, and the Black Sea along with it, belong to Russia forever. Instead, it has become the opposite. It's the place where the world watches Ukraine expose, again and again, that Russia can't actually protect what it claims to have conquered. Every strike adds to the record. Every relocation is a quiet admission. Every burned-out hull sitting in Sevastopol harbor is one more monument to a fortress that was never actually a fortress at all. Just an aging navy hoping nobody would test it, moored in the one city Putin needed the world to believe was untouchable. But Sevastopol isn't the only Russian stronghold on the Black Sea starting to crack. Novorossiysk, the port Russia fled to for safety after Sevastopol became a liability, is proving to be just as vulnerable, and what's happening there next could turn out to be an even bigger problem for Putin's navy than anything that just happened at Sevastopol. That's a story for another video. Make sure you're subscribed to the Military Show so you don't miss it.